Ontario, the province of Ontario. I also the president for CHP Canada in the province of Ontario. And I'm encouraged to be here today, and I hope that I can be an encouragement to you. Something I strive for is to present the Christian worldview in a manner that current Canadian culture can understand, perhaps consider, and hopefully embrace. If current Canadian culture cannot understand what we say, how will they consider or embrace it? Tonight, as I speak to you, mostly a Christian sector of Canadian culture, I'm at liberty to use Christianese, as this is what we had best identify with. But may I say that in Canada, Christ is the cornerstone, but in Africa, He's the center pole. Either way, He's the most important part of a building. And without Him, we build in vain. For the past 5.5 years, I have served as candidate for our EDA. For the past 18 years, I've served as Vice President, then President of the Hamilton Wentworth Family Action Council. At the Council, our mission was set in the early foundation to inform, motivate, and mobilize the concerned community in the area of social issues. Before we begin the main presentation this evening, I would like to provide you with some examples of projects I've been involved in over the years. So let's just have a look at some of these slides. This is the Birthright Scavenger Hunt, 2006. As our council began to disassemble Planned Parenthood in 1996, we recognized it was important to support a pro-life crisis pregnancy agency, as females who may have once turned to Planned Parenthood would need somewhere now to turn. This is a flyer from 2006 promoting our 9th annual Scavenger Hunt for Birthright, a competitive and fun activity which raised approximately 50% of Birthright's annual clothing supply in one morning. Everything we do doesn't have to be negative. We can do positive things. A delegate presentation to the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board regarding the sexual orientation strand of equity. Our council sat on the local public school board Sexual Orientation Steering Committee for the sexual orientation strand of the equity policy. They thought they would accomplish their goals in 3 to 6 months. We fought it out for 2 years. On 2 occasions, 85% of the responding public opposed the strand, yet the school board imposed it against the public will. Sound familiar? In May of 2008, we made a public delegation presentation of 14 minutes in length that took me 60 hours to put together. Declaration of Spiritual Values. This declaration was produced by our council in our early years. We had asked the board, how is it parents are supposed to express their needs for safeguarding of their family spiritual values in the education of their children? The board informed us that the family should communicate in writing with their child's teacher and principal. So we worked with a lawyer and produced a large 4-page legal document which identified the spiritual identity of the family and outlined that because of this identity, there were topics they could not discuss with our children, and as well forbid the school from counseling without parental consent. The school board replied, well, we didn't want you to communicate like that. This document is alive and well in many school boards in Ontario today, and is also now, there's groups that's called the Peace Movement. The guy who we co-founded the Hamilton Wentworth Family Action Council, he now runs something called Peace. You may have heard of it. He's been here in Alberta. It's also running in Hawaii now. So is this what we did 19 years ago? Change with the American language to match what's going on in that particular state with the same premise. Anyway, it's still alive today, and it's still serving people to protect their children's spiritual identity. My first campaign. Okay, move on. Okay, Bill 13 presentation. In May of 2012, I was privileged to present at Queen's Park on behalf of CHP Canada. Queen's Park is the Ontario Legislature. Regarding Ontario Bill 13, Accepting Schools Act. Some would say we have no right as a federal party to address provincial issues. Well, guess what? I live in Ontario. So why not? It was a great moment. Anything sound familiar up there? Males and female washrooms. After Ontario Bill 33, the Transgendered Person Special Rights Bill was unanimously passed by all three big parties in 2012, I felt compelled to present to the Hamilton City Council regarding opposite gender usage of washrooms, change rooms, and showers in December of 2012. Following my 5-minute presentation, there were no comments or questions from councillors. Following the opposition presentation, the presenter was questioned by a councillor. He said, "I note that you often referred to opposite gender usage of washrooms. When you say washrooms, do you mean just washrooms, or do you mean washrooms, change rooms, and showers?" The presenter responded, "Washrooms, change rooms, and showers." "I have a problem with that," said the councillor. That councillor today was just, in 2000, last fall, was just elected as the NDP MP. NDP MP said, "I have a problem with that." But you know, I had a Christian councillor sitting in that same committee who didn't say a word. Isn't that something? Okay, so this petition was used to collect approximately 300 signatures to support the presentation. When we took on Planned Parenthood, we had 3,000 signatures, and there was no email at that time. So imagine all the midnight rites of Paul Revere we had to do in order to get 3,000 signatures. A newspaper article to draw interest. In the article, here's an excerpt where they're interviewing me, and it says, "I found it rather shocking," he said, of the board's decision. "I don't see how opening washrooms, change rooms, and showers for people of opposite gender makes it safer for them. It actually just makes it more dangerous and more uncomfortable for everybody else." Wonderfully Made, Billboard, 2012. Take note the dual sponsorship of CHP Hamilton Mountain and Hamilton Right to Life. Why not work together on a common cause? Someone said, "Well, you can't do that. You can't. One organization can't work with another organization." Well, we paid for September, they paid for October, 2 separate contracts. Done. And there's the billboard. This is the actual billboard that went up across, just slightly down the street from the hospital where the abortions are being performed. This was put into our second annual Wonderfully Made Bus Shelter campaign. This is a 2-stage campaign. In stage 1 of April 2013, this 4-foot by 5-foot image was showing in 3 key bus shelters on the Hamilton Mountain. This one is at Mohawk College. You see, we don't put our pro-life message in front of a church. We put it where we want the message to go, in front of the college. Nearest bus shelter to a public high school. A major transit thoroughway on the mountain where they go up and down the escarpment, the Hamilton Escarpment. Right, that's a very, very busy place in town. In stage 2 of May of 2013, the Wonderfully Made image was replaced. So in April, we had up that kind of attractive, friendly little poster. In the same bus shelter, we took it down, we put this one up. In stage 2 of May 2013, the Wonderfully Made image was replaced with this 4-foot by 5-foot image. Capital punishment is illegal in Canada, yet we continue to execute our children for the crime of... I asked them, those who objected, I asked them to fill in the last line. They couldn't fill it in. We had a dedicated phone line to receive phone calls. We still have that line. That's a Magic Jack. That number there is a Magic Jack phone line. $70 a year, all it costs. And you got a year-round phone. It receives a message. Then it makes it a WMV, file of it, and emails it to me, and then I can answer it wherever I am. Great way if you're going to run an EDA or something like that to have a Magic Jack phone number or something similar. I'm not selling Magic Jack. I'm just telling you what we're using. I get no cuts on it. So there it is, right in front of Mohawk College. People say, well, that must have been bashed down. You know, they must have put rocks and bricks with that one. We've done 4 years of campaigns. We've never had any damage to any bus shelters, not until this point in time. And if they do, it's not my problem. I'm just renting. By the way, I'm going to give a little buzz here. Patterson's sign wouldn't work with us. This is Out Front Media. You see Out Front Media, they'll work with you. Okay, just so you know. Yeah, it used to be CBS Outdoors. Now they're called Out Front Media. You'll see some of the stuff around here. Pardon me? Yeah, I've seen some signs coming in, yep. Okay, so if you're looking for someone who's going to work with you, go to out front first. I don't get a cut, I'm telling you, they're good people. Even sometimes when they couldn't get someone to fill their bus shelter for the next month, they left us up and didn't charge us. They just kept leaving them up. Yep, wonderful. Okay, move it along. And there it is at the Upper Wellington. We stand on guard for thee. That's the very busy bus transit area. And this is faith in action. So not only did we put the bus shelters up, we also put 2,500 flyers out, hand-delivered them into the homes surrounding the bus shelters. So not only did you see that bus shelter every day for 28 days, you also got a personal flyer in your mailbox. And on the back is a message about various court rulings about abortion, and none of them have ever said that abortion is illegal. They've actually questioned if it's even beneficial. There's a couple of samples back there. If you want to have a look, I didn't bring enough for everybody to have, but you want to see what's on the back. So we like to educate people, and that's faith with action. Children need their father. Bus shelter and flyer campaign, June 2015. This image appeared in bus shelter locations. It was also printed in color on 2,000 flyers, along with a strong message about the impact of fatherlessness on children. So on the back, there's a couple of those you can look at. On the back is a message, the statistics around children who are fatherless. It's not good. Now, someone would want me to encourage us to say something about LGBT. I don't go out putting out posters about LGBT. I put up posters of what I do believe in. End of story. Okay, get over the stuff of trying to badmouth people. Talk about what you do believe in. By the way, this family is the image. This family in the image live in Duncan, British Columbia. They're my daughter, and they're my son-in-law, my 3 grandchildren. I'm heading out there Saturday to see them before I go back to Ontario. So they're my poster children. Luke was born today, but his life began 9 months ago. This 2015 spring campaign was posted in 4 bus shelters located in our EDA and 2,000 flyers. There's some samples back there. I got those you can take home. I don't have enough for everybody, but if you want to grab one, grab it. Lovely story on the back talking about how a child is developing in the womb, how he's feeling, if he can feel secure or not. Wouldn't it be nice if this child could feel secure? So it doesn't talk about ripping off his head and things like that. We have a different approach. We believe it's better to have someone read the whole message, get through it, and give some deep consideration to what we're saying. There's places for other brutal campaigns, but I don't think the public bus shelter is the place for it. University campus, so I don't have a problem with that. But that's just where I stand on that kind of thing. We try to get something that everybody can at least read and think about. So that's all the images. And all these images, by the way, if you were to form an EDA here in Edmonton, all these images are available to you. We would simply change the art. We change to match your EDA, and you just ask for it. We send it. You print it. Away you go. You're on the run. And so that's some of the projects we've done. It's not all of them, but that's just some of them. I want to move on to the main topic. What can happen at a table? So now we come to the main presentation. What can happen at a table? My intention tonight is to encourage and motivate you to seriously consider the benefits of contending for the Christian worldview in the public square, not only during election season, but also between elections. In 1996, I co-founded the Hamilton Wentworth Family Action Council. It was formed as a means by which we would address the then Hamilton Public School Board regarding a poisonous sex ed video series that they were using. It did not appear that we would be successful. After our first presentation to the board, where we requested that the series be banned, the trustees voted 13-3 against our request. However, we maintained our communication with the board and kept informing parents. Eventually, the board agreed to mark the video with a red dot, which meant sensitive, and that when it was to be shown, a school letter would have to be sent to each student's home advising the film content. To our knowledge, it was never shown again. I was listening to Dr. James Dobson on Focus of the Family one morning, many years ago. He responded to the question, why do Christians seem to have so little influence on public policy? You ever ask yourself that question? Maybe not those direct words, but How come what we say doesn't matter? How come no one listens to us? Here was his response. Christians are too quick to walk away from the table. If they don't win, they pick up their marbles, they cry foul, and they go home. Is it true? I think in many cases it's true. If you ever have an opportunity to participate at a public table, don't expect to win on round 1, as you probably won't. But don't leave the table. Come back for round 2 and round 3 and round 4 and so on. By 1997, we had learned much about the destructive safe-sex approach which was being used to instruct children in public school, at public health clinics, and at Planned Parenthood, and we didn't approve. We assembled 20 citizens and presented them a package about Planned Parenthood operations in Hamilton. The most significant part of the package was a comparison table, which compared Planned Parenthood services to those of Birthright. At this time, Planned Parenthood was receiving about $450,000 of our local taxes. Birthright was receiving $0. After reviewing the comparison table, it was obvious that Planned Parenthood was doing $0 for expectant parents and parents of newborns, while Birthright was doing much. Essentially, all Planned Parenthood was doing was preparing the children to have sex, then selling them the tools and providing the abortion referrals and selling medications to deal with the sexual diseases. It's big business to create a void you can never fill. The 20 citizens were then to go in teams of 2 to meet with the counselor of their ward and give them the same presentation that we gave them. So they did. It was reported back to us that many of the counselors would review the comparison table and remark, just what does Planned Parenthood do for parents? After my meeting with my counselor, he thanked me and then walked out of the room, but then came back. He then thanked me for the research and the solid evidence he had received. He said that many Christians want counselors to take their side in a public meeting, but they're not willing to do the research and provide the evidence. Our city councilors, MPPs, MPs are not experts in every area of public governance and cannot be. If you want them to work for you, you must work for them and give them the tools they need. Now that each and every counselor was educated, it was time to take the official presentation to the Social Services and Public Health Committee. By pre-educating counselors, we had set the table before we ever got there. We knew the vote before we went into the room. People, that's the way it really works. Counselors don't make up their mind at the meeting. They've made up their mind days or weeks before. If you think you're going to go and hold up a sign and change their mind, I don't think so. We counted the counselors on our side before we had the meeting. Then we asked for a presentation. Isn't that sneaky? That's the world. That's the world we live in. So we presented the dark side of Planned Parenthood that afternoon and requested that their funding be denied. The following discussion was heated and long. Here is a newspaper article from February 27, 1998, which is written from the perspective from the media, aka the enemy. And here's a blow-up so you can actually, possibly some of you will be able to read it when the curtains are all drawn there. Okay. This portion reads, the next time the Planned Parenthood issue comes before regional council's Community Service and Public Health Committee, let's hope the councilors either check their personal biases at the door or substitute thinking caps for the dunce hats they're wearing this week. Please note that you must check your personal biases at the door, is what the Human Rights Commission is demanding of Christians in the public square. We may be permitted to be Christians in our homes and churches, but required to be secular in the public square. We need to understand the real agenda that is underway in Canada. It's far more than silencing Christians in the public square. Ultimately, It is to eradicate Christianity by making it illegal. Churches who preach against homosexuality are now accused of spiritual violence, an attempt to make it illegal. Starting off with after a marathon. After a marathon session lasting 4 hours, I can remember it was so hot in that room, I was sweating. And counselors running around, I don't know if you've ever seen what goes on sometimes, but negotiating with each other, and it was quite it was enlightening for me. The committee rejected a recommendation from the region's senior medical health experts to continue a financial partnership with the downtown birth control clinic. Instead, they instructed staff to come back with a list of other community organizations that might contribute to delivering the sexual health services mandated by the province. So the staff recommended the city continue to fund Planned Parenthood, and the councillors said, "We reject the staff recommendations, we want new partners." The doors were beginning to close on Planned Parenthood Hamilton. It gets better. Later, this same writer wrote, "It means an obscure pressure group can walk into a room," he's talking about us, "and malign and misrepresent both a minority and a venerable community organization. They can do it not only with impunity, but with a silence that signals consent. You'd almost think this was 17th century Salem, Massachusetts, not Hamilton, 1998. When you are at the table, expect the world to speak all manner of evil against you. It's a good sign you're on the right track." While Planned Parenthood was not completely cut off that day, they soon saw significant cuts, which were followed by more cuts. 3 years later, they closed their doors in Hamilton. Planned Parenthood Hamilton is the initial city where Planned Parenthood began in Hamilton. So we shut down the base. More about this later. Something else very significant was birthed that day, and it became known as the Sexual Health Network. This was to be a network of agencies in our region who would help to steer public health in the provision of sexual health services to our youth. At the very first meeting, there was probably 30 or more groups there, many dark agencies like Planned Parenthood, Hamilton AIDS Network, and so on, and a few good ones like Birthright, Canadians for Positive Community Standards, and Hamilton Wentworth Family Action Council. The good people worked hard and spoke boldly to establish the mission of the network, which to this day remains as postponing sexual activity in adolescence. And imagine public health using their dollars to postpone sexual activity in adolescence. They were putting themselves out of work. Not long after the mission was written in stone, the dark agencies left. You see, there's not much money in abstinence. All that remained, providing direction to public health, were the three great groups I mentioned earlier, and another great agency called Ideas. Our council representative, Lynn Shime, inquired of public health as to why Planned Parenthood no longer came to the meetings. The answer? Planned Parenthood felt bullied and intimidated, so would no longer attend. Sad, eh? I thank God for people like Lynn and others who dare to bully and intimidate the darkness of this world. At that time, Lynn was intimidating darkness. She was 64 years old. Today she's 82, and she's still kicking up a storm. And she's still part of that sexual health network at 82 years old. From the mission of postponing sexual activity in adolescence came the Worth the Wait campaign. If you were to drive around Hamilton today, you would see the sex is a choice post on the back of buses, bus shelters, billboards across Hamilton. They are everywhere. They say that sex is a choice and tell a reader to speak to a trusted adult about this. Also on the poster is the Worth the Wait logo. In this slide, you see it currently posted on the boards of a public hockey arena. That's just down in beside the net. We're sending the message to the hockey players. And we're using public dollars to do it. Wow. 13 years after the inception of the campaign, it remains live and well. 18 years after our presentation at City Hall. If we had not presented in 1998, this campaign would not be alive today. The Bible tells us the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. However, if you want to knock down the gates of hell, you must push on them. Sometimes fighting darkness involves pushing darkness back. One small candle pushes back much darkness. We've had many victories over our 19 years, and I will mention some of them briefly near the end of this presentation. We gave and we give God the glory for each and every victory. For everything we did, we bathed in prayer, being careful not to run ahead of Him, but never fearing to step out when He allowed the doors to open. Imagine what would not have happened if we had quit after losing 13-3 at our first presentation. If we had just said no fair, why should we try anymore? What if we had walked away from the table? I have many favorite Bible accounts, and one of them is the rebuilding of Jerusalem's fallen walls and gates under the leadership of Nehemiah. At this point in time, the Jews had been defeated and captured and were living in captivity for some time. Jerusalem laid in ruins. The walls of Jerusalem were broken down, the gates were burned. In many ways, Jerusalem sounds like Canada. The wall of Christian heritage is broken down, the gates of spiritual truths and principles are burned. There are 4 observations about Nehemiah which made him an effective godly leader. Number 1, Nehemiah used compassion as a springboard of obedience to God's will. It was Nehemiah's brokenness over his compassion for Jerusalem that drove him forward. Try to make an angry public presentation and see how far you will proceed. Initially, often it is anger over evil public policy which fires us up. But if we must ask the Holy Spirit to convert that energy of anger to compassion if we wish to move forward. It's of utmost importance we recognize that the world is looking for an opportunity to shoot down a Christian worldview presentation, so perception is everything. Be sensitive to how you may be perceived. Number 2 about Nehemiah. Nehemiah recognized that cooperation with others is often required to carry out God's will. Imagine if Nehemiah had determined that he would just do it himself. He didn't need any help. Getting others to help would just be more effort than it was worth. Try not to be a do-it-myself person, while at the same time be cautious of who you invite to help. You want people who are like-minded and work well with others. Number 3, confidence results from fervent prayer and application of God's Word. I was listening to a radio preacher one day who presented another powerful point that has stuck with me. He said, "If you hope to succeed under seemingly tough circumstances, you must learn to look beyond the obvious." This is going to take a lot of work. Yeah, that's obvious. What if no one helps? What if we can't find the right sound system? What if we run out of money? What if someone is offended? What if my church friends say that Christians have no place in public affairs? Thankfully, that never happens. What if my Christian buddies tell me that CHP is a wasted vote? What if the Toronto Blue Jays are playing that afternoon? I remember there were those who would say to me, "You can't fight City Hall." And I've been told the school board won't listen. And I have people that say, "Well, what will you do if this happens? And how you respond if this is said?" That's all the obvious stuff. Get ready for it. That's just obvious. You see, anyone can find a difficulty. But the Nehemiahs of this day are already far past the what-ifs. They have a vision beyond the mountain. They have told the mountain how big their God is. They've already envisioned the end result. They've picked up the tools, and they've begun the work. Don't be discouraged by naysayers and what-ifers. Stop and ask yourself the bigger question. What if we Christians in Canada do nothing? What will happen to our nation if we sit and complain but do nothing? These questions alone should make you want to do something. And the 4th point, courage will manifest itself as sanctified tenacity in refusing to compromise on the conviction that one is doing God's will. I love it. Courage manifests itself as sanctified tenacity. You see, sanctified tenacity is not inborn. It manifests itself in those who step out in courage and faith to do God's will. It's something that grows in you when you step out. Defending the unborn is God's will. Reaching out to your community is God's will. Protecting your children from spiritual harm is God's will. So step out in faith and encourage. Begin the work and ask God for sanctified tenacity. So what was the outcome of Nehemiah's sanctified tenacity? Well, Nehemiah 6:15, it says, "So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days, October the 2nd. Verse 16 says, "When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done by Nehemiah." No. This work had been done with the help of our God. A seemingly insurmountable task completed in 52 days. I like verse 16. The enemy lost his self-confidence. You have to love that. You see, the outcome of sanctified tenacity. What's the outcome of sanctified tenacity? Here it is. In the righteous results in loss of self-confidence of the unsanctified. I've seen it. I've seen in public, I won't call them battles, but that's what they are. Public challenges. I've seen the enemy lose their confidence and withdraw, pull back. In this Hamilton Spectator article of February 13th, 1997, entitled "Planned Parenthood Makes Its Case," the following was written. Program reduction, talking about them, will result in reduced use of medical services by sexually active teenage girls. This will lead to increased adolescent pregnancy, increased abortions, increased numbers of adolescent mothers on social assistance, and increased rates of sexually transmitted diseases. That's their prediction. Planned Parenthood just wished it was true. Because if it was true what they were saying, then their services would be justified. "15 to 19-year-old pregnancies, 1986 to 1997. I'll explain it to you in a minute. This graph was prepared by our council using Ontario Ministry of Health data. It begins in 1986, which was the year that the province of Ontario embarked on a province-wide public health effort to reduce 15 to 19-year-old pregnancies using the safe sex approach, which was based on the idea that these youth would be sexually active anyway, so why not teach them how to do it safely? It's kind of like the new safe gambling concepts that's bringing up now. Not only did students receive foolish instruction, they were also provided tools to be sexually active. This effort was largely led by Planned Parenthood, the experts in sexual health. So on this graph, I'll very quickly explain it to you. 1986, they got this bright idea that, hey, we want to get our kids even have less pregnancies, so we're going to teach them all about safe sex. 1981, it's 41.1. By 1996, it's 51.3. So in 15 years, it climbs by 25%. This is evidence of a failed public program. Now, you won't be able to read it very well, but I'm going to point to it. Please note that we added to this timeline graph for 1997 the Hamilton Wentworth Family Action Council intervenes. So we put this on the graph. There's a graph to follow of what happened next coming up. So you're going to have to hang with me now. And we presented this to council. We said, look what you've been doing. Look at the money's been going. Follow the money. Follow the results. We're stepping in right here. Now follow us. Let's see what happens. We put our name on the line. Next to prayer and submission to the Spirit of God, The most effective item I found in demolishing public foolishness is being strongly backed in evidence that proves the failure of foolish social engineering. Evidence from the world of those doing the damage that proves their efforts to be foolishness. If I had simply stood and only presented a Bible verse to Hamilton Council and not provided any hard evidence that God's Word is true, how far do you think they would have proceeded to follow the lead of our council? A few minutes? A few seconds? Get out of my face? Get out of this room? Probably, right? I work very hard at finding evidence from the world to demolish their own arguments. Remember, our public presentations, for the most part, are to those who do not recognize that God even exists. Or that if He does, He has no place in public governance. For me to present literal Scripture to the world without the evidence of its truth is ineffective, because it will be dismissed as outright as religion and personal bias without evidence. How many people think that's true? That's what would be said of you. If you came with Bible verses and that's all you had to say, you're dismissed. Thank you for your time. When it comes to public policy and public money, the claim is always that decisions are evidence-based, so I use evidence to show their failures. What is actually happening is this. I know God's boundaries for healthy and prosperous living to be true, so I seek to promote this truth not by quoting a verse of Scripture only, rather by showing the evidence that proves His Word to be true. Demolish every argument and pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. How? By showing that the world's thinking to be failed and the knowledge of God to be true. I'm not preaching to the world about my religiosity. Rather, I'm showing them the truth of God's plan, the truth of the Christian worldview, and hoping they too will embrace it because the evidence proves it to be true. People believe things, even if it's not true, they believe things because they believe it to be true, even if it's false. But if I can show them something and show it's true, they'll believe it. Personal evangelism is paramount in the saving of mankind's soul for eternity. It's obvious the most important task we can undertake for the eternal soul of mankind. However, engaging the public to understand, perhaps consider and hopefully embrace the Christian worldview is also important for a better life in society here on earth. This is where I found myself for the last 19 years. We put our name on the timeline before we had access to what would happen in the following years. There's about a 3 to 5 year delay on statistics. We put our name there, but we had to wait for the statistics. Actually, I had to go to the Privacy Commission, take the Ministry of Health to the Privacy Commission. That took me 3 years because they wouldn't want to give me the data. I got a folder that thick of letters and applications, appeals. So I finally went there by myself. There I sat. There sat the Ministry of Health, Ontario. And the trial lawyer turns around and says to the Ministry of Health, give that data to Mr. Enos and give it to him today. There you go. I'm not bragging about myself. Don't think about that. I'm talking about tenacity and staying with it and praying about it and asking God to help you. That's what I'm talking. It's not about me. I don't want to get that point of view across at all. So, we put our name on the timeline, and before we had access to what would happen the years following our intervention, we presented to Hamilton Council. Here we go. That's where you, whoops, wrong button, back it up. Don't anybody leave. Okay, here we go. That's where I last left off. Woo! What happened? What happened? By the end of 1999, attendance by teens at the public health and Planned Parenthood clinics, the attendance of kids attending those clinics declined by 57%. Kids were not going to those clinics anymore. They had to give us all the data of all their attendance by council. Give it all to them. They're watching you. Well, I want to see it all handed over to them. Well, according to Planned Parenthood, they predicted that. They said the attendance would go down. But what else did they say? They also said that the pregnancy rates would go up. However, During the same period of time, that when attendance was down by 57%, in that same 2 years, the 15 to 19-year-old pregnancy rates fell steeply by 22.4%, followed by a further drop in 2000 to 37.3 per thousand, a full 27.3% decline in just 3 years, and the lowest pregnancy rate for 15 to 19-year-olds on record for Hamilton to that point in time. God's ways are the best, and there's the evidence. Who can deny it? And you know what else happened? We saw a 27.3% decline in abortions, didn't we? Because they weren't pregnant. Think about it. This, using the world's evidence, proved that the less our children see Planned Parenthood-like counseling, often taught in our schools and public health clinics, the better they fare. Parents are the most significant means of teenage pregnancy prevention. As I near the end of this presentation, I want to share with you 4 other significant events that the Lord has allowed me to experience following the defeat of Planned Parenthood Hamilton and the record low teen pregnancy rate. Some other significant events. In 2000, the Public School Board, in conjunction with Public Health, produced a sex ed curriculum for grades 5 through 8, which it very upset, and they made their views known in various ways. One very successful method of bringing pressure on the board was organized by our council, and we explained it at a meeting that we had called for parents. Approximately 80 parents attended. As we pointed out some of the concerns with the curriculum, parents were growing very, very angry. Been very angry about sex ed lately? We asked a simple question. If you could affect change regarding the curriculum, and you could do it in 25 minutes, would you do it? Of course. Most said they would do it. But then they wanted to know what it was they were supposed to do. So, we provided them with the phone number of the Director of Education and asked them to call him on Monday morning and leave a message approximately 2.5 minutes long on his voicemail. And then call and leave the same message that afternoon. Do this every day for 5 days until you get a personal return call from the director. 5 days at 5 minutes, 25 minutes to bring positive change. Would you do it? 25 minutes to change a curriculum from bad to good? Sure you would. Did it work? I began the charge on Sunday evening. You have to forgive me, I picked up a phone on Sunday. Leaving a long message with the director forewarning him of what was coming. 65 people of the 80 agreed to be phone soldiers and make the calls. The director received 65 calls in the morning, 65 calls in the afternoon on Monday, 65 calls on Tuesday morning, 65 calls on Tuesday afternoon, but on Wednesday we received a call from the board asking us to call out the phone campaign, and they would meet with us that night. And so it happened. Eventually, this led to an opportunity for our council to present our case before the Board of Trustees. We presented the darkness and the foolishness of the curriculum, the evidence. The Board of Education that night, not a committee of the whole, so it was less people, it was just that particular committee, the Education Committee, was supported by a 6-to-1 vote, and it directed the staff to rewrite the curriculum with the input of the Hamilton Wentworth Family Action Council. Rewrite it all. So the board staff, along with Public Health, rewrote the entire curriculum. They produced a new 450-page, get the name of this title, Healthy Living Curriculum, and it was actually healthy. Imagine that, spending public health dollars on healthy living. Poof! Phenomenal and new. This curriculum was then given to our council to critique line by line, page by page. A 2-year back and forth process was resulted in the curriculum in which abstinence was the big message, and parents and pastors were at the top of the list as go-to people for students. The previous version had public health and Planned Parenthood at the top. Pastors and parents were at the bottom. The list got flipped over. There were several lessons where students were required to take the activity home and complete it with the parents participating. This page had to be signed by the parent and returned to the teacher. Wow, parental involvement. That's unique. Think about this. We positively impacted the curriculum which will be taught to 25 to 40,000 students a year. This can be the reward of getting to and staying at the public table. Significant event number 2. In 2004, the board staff opted to revise the curriculum again. However, this time the process was different. Our council was not even aware of this revision until we received a phone call from the superintendent responsible. She informed us that the draft vision, the revised curriculum, was complete and requested our council to pick up a copy and critique it before it went into circulation. They didn't want to face that all over again. Our council's heavy into, and we did it all over again, and it was worth every minute. Sorry, backing up. Council intervention. Where are we here? Yep. Good. Our council's intervention into Planned Parenthood, public health, and public school sex education program led us to discover that the national age of consent for sexual activity and consent was 14 at the time. Anybody remember when it used to be 14? Yep, it used to be 14. We were shocked to learn this and felt it needed to be raised to 18. But this was a federal issue. How could we achieve this without a nationwide effort? We expressed our wishes to Canada Family Action Coalition, which started right here in Edmonton. Roy Byer and Peter Stock were the original founders of Canada Family Action Coalition. Now it's called Canada Family Action. It runs out of BC, but nonetheless, it was Brian Rushelt for a number of years. I'm sure you all know him. Great guy. So we expressed our wishes with Canada Family Action Coalition, and they agreed to make this a national campaign. Brochures with tear-up postcards were mass-produced, and in Hamilton we set up tables in 4 shopping malls, educating passers-by and collecting signed postcards. Notice we didn't set up our tables in churches. We went to the public. Do you know when you do something like this, you're helping the entire community? You're not just helping your church. Parents don't want their kids sexually active, whether they're Christians or not. So when you do a service like this, you're serving everybody. And that's good news. We're being salt and light to the entire community. So we had all these signed postcards and so on. We also printed in at City Hall. We requested a letter of support be written from the City of Hamilton to Parliament. Believe it or not, there was an opponent to raising the age of consent. Public health. Put it in writing. They put in writing that they could better protect the youth than could raise the age of consent. Well, anyway, this effort was repeated in other municipalities, and several municipalities across Canada wrote letters to Parliament supporting the campaign. In 2006, the age of consent for sexual activity was raised from 14 to 16. Not the 18 we set out for, but certainly better than we had prior. Do you know if still at 14, we'd have legal 14-year-old prostitutes right now? Parents couldn't intervene? So this is the final example coming up. A cooperative campaign, okay. Notice how I got a spelling by Canada Amly Action Club. I have to show you that. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Just do pretty good and get going, okay? That's what I did. It's pretty good. We can do it, okay? Formation of washroom, change room, and shower usage draft policy for the City of Hamilton. This is becoming a very sensitive subject in Alberta. During my presentation, I described a little bit about our City Hall presentation regarding opposite gender washroom, change room, and shower facility usage, and how one councillor provided comment. What happened next? Do we simply make the presentation and then walk away from the table trusting others to do that good work behind the doors? Of course not. That afternoon, an email went sent to that councillor who spoke out, thanking him for such a revealing question and his strong response. This email was copied to a second councillor whom we have quietly connected with for our entire council history. We requested a meeting with the two councillors to put the policy wheels in motion. Once again, we were beginning to set the table quietly behind the doors. This led to 5 meetings with city management and a quiet councillor, which took place over the following year. Over that year, management shared with us a draft guideline directive for rec center staff as to how to deal with such sensitive issues when people claiming to be transgendered are attempting to use opposite gender facilities. Their draft document was very weak. The draft document was very weak and contained only parts of the Human Rights Code which seemed to support opposite gender usage of the washrooms and changes to showers. So we said little at the meeting to object. Rather, we requested permission to make some recommendations for the document for their consideration. You see, what we could have done is this. What, are you wacky? This is stupid. We could have acted like that at the meeting. But we said, oh, thank you for the draft document. Do you mind if we take it home and make a few comments? You see the difference? If you want to participate, be reasonable. It's hard. You have to swallow it sometimes, but be reasonable. Sure, take it home. Take your time. Bring back your comments. Thank you. We will. So, we made several changes to the document and used it to present the evidence for the Human Rights Code support of our position. We then included 4 points to show the policy was how the policy was to be carried out. The Human Rights Code in Ontario actually says it's not discriminatory to have segregated facilities based on public decency. That's what it says. Why did they put it in there? Because they're talking about washrooms, changes and showers. But they did, somehow the city staff who were working with the Equity Committee didn't want to put that one out there. They just talked about other areas, but it specifically says that is not discriminatory. So we put it in there. So we made several changes. We then included 4 points to how the policy was to be carried out. They agreed to our policy and 3 of the 4 points, but they did not want to give into the 4th point, which very clearly stated that facility usage must be strictly in keeping with signage posted at the entry of the facility. They would not support this point, which means he actually intended to abandon our cause if push came to shove. The first 3 points were kind of feathery. The last one was, this is what we mean. They said, I don't think so. We then met separately with the councillor, and he fully supported our case, and he asked the management why they would not. They forfeited. They, however, insisted that the new draft policy not become official until a need for such policy arose. All this was done quietly behind the closed doors, and I prepared actual minutes of every meeting with every councillor, with every city staff, and all the minutes I prepared, I sent them back and had them approve them. Send me an email, I approve, that's what we said. That's very important. When you have a meeting, take notes, make minutes, send it back to them. Is this what you agreed to? Because later on they're going to deny it. But when you have an email saying, yep, that's what I said. Not a nice guy, am I? The need for policy has arisen, and we are now pursuing the official approval of this certain policy. So what's been happening in the last 2 to 3, let's see, so that was 2012. Since 2012, very occasionally, I'd see an article in the newspaper that would talk about, for instance, a man was arrested for flashing children in a mall and charged with voyeurism. So I wrote to the mayor and I copied all the city councillors and about 600 people in Hamilton. And I just said, look at that. They arrested a man for pulling down his pants in public. But somehow you want us to think that it's progressive for a man to shower with my daughter. Like, how does that work? Why is it illegal to flash people, but my daughter's phobic because she won't shower with a man. How does that work? And so, over the last 3 years, when something... I'm not being a smarty pants. I'm asking a very smart question, I think. A reasonable question. Why is he arrested, but she's got the problem when he gets in the shower with her? Why is that okay? So I think I sent 3 or 4 of them when different examples came up. I just kept it in front of them, and we had an election, councillors changed, right? So I keep it in front of them. And finally I got an email, probably about 3 months ago from the mayor's office. Mr. Enos, we appreciate your concerns and your comments. However, we have to meet the Human Rights Code. I've already explained it to them. You don't need to meet that. It's not there. And then, anyway, I need to get to the end of this. We're fighting it now. I had some very interesting email responses. I posted them on Facebook. I Twittered them. I sent them out to 600 people. Just before I came here on Friday, I came here Sunday. On Friday, I sent out, maybe Saturday morning, an email to about 300 people right in the direct Hamilton area. I said, here's what the mayor's saying. He's saying, yeah, men can shower with girls. What's the problem? I didn't say that. What I do, I actually took text out of their email and put it in. And I sent it out and said, if you really care, the very least you can do is call the mayor. Here's his phone number. And then I left town. But I was leaving. I'm going to continue when I go back. But I got a posting on my Facebook, CHP Hamilton Mountain Facebook, from the mayor's office, posting on my Facebook. There's a feeding of misinformation going on. If you want the real story, call the office. Great. Because all they've been doing is posting their own emails. So we're going to see what happens. I'm not promising we're going to win, okay? But I'm promising what Ronald Reagan once said. If you can't make them see the light, at least make them feel the heat. Okay? So what does all this I've said tonight have to do with you as an EDA? If you were going to form an EDA for the Christian Heritage Party, assuming somebody in this room has that interest, what does that have to do with you? I have a purpose in being here. It's because I believe that the Christian Heritage Party of Canada exists for a purpose. A purpose greater than simply placing a candidate in an election every 3 to 4 years. Perhaps 40 or 50 years ago, a party like CHP Canada was less important than it is today. 40 or 50 years ago, God's standards were pretty much the accepted basis of law and governance. I remember my grade 1 teacher, public school teacher, reading the children's Bible to the class each morning, and the school day beginning with the Lord's Prayer. I remember 30 years ago when children were removed from homes of homosexuals, and sodomy was against the law, and it should be. So the need for a party like CHP Canada was less apparent as God's supremacy reigned in Canadian governance. Today, this is no longer the case. Christian principles are eliminated from Canadian law at a rapid rate. CHP Canada, as a political party, I believe, must become active in contending for the Christian worldview year-round, not just during election periods. As EDAs, we have an opportunity to contend for the Christian worldview locally, not just federally. We are tax-paying citizens of our towns and our cities, and we have an equal opportunity to participate in the formation of local policy and governance as well as provincial and federal. I believe that we not only have the right, but also the responsibility to contend for the Christian worldview in the public square and at the public table. I also believe this: if we Christians fail to show up in the public square or at the public table, others will take our place that do not hold our worldview. This concerns me deeply, and it should concern all of us. Our Christian heritage is being reduced to rubble, while so many Christians sit idle, letting it happen. In a sense, we are losing by forfeit. In closing, I urge you, as Christians, forget about the Christian Heritage Party for the moment. As Christians, I urge you to be salt and light in your community year-round. Encourage other like-minded Christians to join with you and to contend boldly for the Christian worldview? If not you, then who? How do we expect to reap where we do not sow? Thank you.